the way that some of these Chinese monks would actually travel to India, it's to track the dead corpses along the way into India, right? So that they know that they're on the right track, because there are a few previous people tried to get to India, but they have died on their way. So they were very much interested. So like Buddhism became a Chan religion in China, and then later on it became Zen in Japanese.
Can I judge it? Can I just say two or three of the most important things in the Shinshin Ming, and then I'll give you what I think it means. It says that the more you think, the more you speak, the further from the truth you get. Stop thinking and end your problems. So silence does seem to be the universal currency or the universal communication, meaning that we're all playing this sound word game. And so all these word sounds are just totally conceptual. Just the material world is the base reality. And so basically all communication is hypnosis. And you do realize that technically almost everything is a concept, and we're so entranced with these words that the concepts seem to be so real that we can't get it out of our emotional central nervous system. Like, if you ask somebody, do you have an ego? Do you have anger? Is A through Z conceptual? All these things, all these words are, and I don't know if you know Heronstone with his dead monkey brain shit. Like, I'm just saying that once you come to this realization that you are that your reality is technically a social construct trance, in many ways you do realize that the sword is the pen is the sword. You are your own worst enemy, and that if you have this understanding, hopefully you're more peaceful and you're happier, and you're able to share the joy of that message in many ways, like the gospel of, the New Testament, that type of a thing. I mean, you basically become a positive neurolinguistic programmer for yourself and for other people, I believe, all the time, because you have no anxiety about your future. And you do, in many ways, this is, I guess the last thing I'll say is, you realize that your brain is the most valuable object in the universe. And if you're lucky enough to have done the work to improve your brain, I mean, you basically want to help other people get free. And that's one of the main Buddhistic principles, is to liberate all sentient beings.
Right. So yes, so there are different schools, and you're right. So one of the schools, mainly sort of the Zen school, they prefer more of kind of a silent way of teaching. So there is a story of this is the Buddha actually went around with a flower and showed it to the students, and one of them laughed, and therefore he realized. So you have this sort of things in Zen Buddhism, but in Indian philosophy and so forth, there is a lot of things like Dharma talk and discussion and so forth. Yes, so I get that, but I agree with you. Like when you are in society, people give you a name, and people call you by your name. So this is the reason why people retreat themselves to a forest. You're not part of the society. Now you could really think about your position in the world, opposed to in a society that's conditioned by social conditioning. So it is part of the way is to figure out this sense of I and a self. It is to remove from society.
You guys just cued me on to something. I was chuckling, and I couldn't take the conversation two ways, so I'll take this one. But in response to the Western pronoun, gender pronoun kerfuffle that goes on, at least in the West, right? My response to changing or trying to force grammar on other people would be to take offense if somebody used the term I or you, right? Such that that part of the universe must refer to this part of the universe without using the term you, and this part of the universe will cease using the term I, right? And to try to force a grammatical set that in one way I think induces a Zen or a non-dual positioning. And the other thing I was going to mention to John is that it was interesting because he's speaking of language as just concepts and babble, and to see it that way, and it is kind of true. It's just kind of there, and yet, and then to say that it's the pen and the sword. And I was busy thinking about how he was attempting to bridge people that are experiencing this variety need to read so they can integrate, so that language as bridge for an integration of re-understanding. And then that brought me up, and so now I'm on to the second angle of the way I wanted to move the discussion. So, but is this, and I'm curious of other people relative to this. Some people, their relationship to language, their internal monologue, right? Some people will see the words pass through their mind's eye while they're speaking. It's almost like a typewriter belt or something that's going on. Other people, they'll pre-hear the word prior to saying it. And then other people, they've lost their internal monologue, meaning the internal monologue has ceased, and it's almost as if the language is appearing in front of them or at the moment that they're speaking it. And so I'm wondering whether or not you guys, through your meditative states of attempting to rid the ego, find yourself in a non-internal monologic state, right? And this is more of a curiosity in linguistics and the arguments that Chomsky has in terms of the innateness of the brain's relationship to linguistics. But anyway, I'm just kind of curious of what you guys, if you guys have ever, do you guys experience an internal monologue that matches your words, or do you experience a disjointed there? Would you ever say that you've lost your internal monologue?
Yeah, so that's a very good point. So when I first started to do these practices, I used to think about a lot of things, but once I'd done these things for a quite long time, what happens is that you have this more of a kind of a reflective form of mind that is just sort of seeing, and so there isn't, not necessarily there is a dialogue happening. Things actually just happens, opposed to the mind is actually kind of trying to make stuff. It's just sort of like, I think you can kind of describe it kind of like more like a flow state, but there is varying degree. I would say for myself, there are times that when I do sit down and meditate, the mind is absolutely quiet. But there are times that I do find things are much more.
Jaja, can I just interrupt you? Can I interrupt you real quick?
Sure.
So it's 7:34 a.m. CST, and I do want to address two topics or two things that Icky said, and then I also want to mention that just listening to you, Jaja, or just listening to what anybody says in this room with regards to these topics will probably be more interesting and more important for me to listen to than even to tell you my spiel or my opinions. But the first thing I wanted to address was Noam Chomsky. I've written Noam Chomsky via email, and he does respond to email. But I will tell you that his response was less than lackluster and not interesting in the slightest. And since I believe that all communication is hypnosis, and I know that everybody has moral failings and has an evil inclination, in the email, he said, "I'm no guru." And the fact that he can't even, he doesn't even, he wouldn't even talk about it. Anyways, I don't want to go into it, but I'm just telling you that I'm not impressed with Noam Chomsky in the slightest. And when he said you can die in your house if you don't get vaccinated, you should be barred from grocery stores, that was all the Noam Chomsky I ever needed. And I have a couple of his books, but I'll tell you, I have many other books that are far more interesting and by people who I don't think, are whatever they are. I just don't like Noam Chomsky anymore. But My whole point, then the second thing I wanted to say was about the ego, is that that is just a concept, you know. And one time I was watching a beautiful sunset in San Diego, and my sister was